This is Democracy Watch. I'm joined by my co-host, voting rights attorney, and the founder of Democracy Docket, Marc Elias. So, Marc, a major ProPublica report revealed that because of Georgia's new election law, that's SB 202, 89,000 voters' eligibility was challenged by just 6 right-wing activists. Now, of those 89,000 challenges, over 11,000 were successful, including over 2,300 voters who were removed from the rolls and 8,700 who were being placed in a challenged status. Is there any indication as to whether those removals or those challenges are actually accurate?
This is just an absolute disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace that we live in a country where private vigilantes are encouraged by the state of Georgia to challenge voters' eligibility to vote. And so is there any evidence that any of them were accurate? What there is evidence is that this was an effort to engage in mass disenfranchisement. It led to actual disenfranchisement. And that's really what people need to realize about this.
How do you presume, in reality, that 6 people have the time, the wherewithal, the know-how to challenge 87 or 89,000 voters? Like, are those 6 people a proxy for some bigger entity here?
Oh, they have to be. I mean, come on. I mean, let's just use common sense for a second. We saw in 2021, in the run-up to the 2021 runoff election, and so that everyone sets the stage. In 2020, obviously, Joe Biden defeats Donald Trump. The Senate at that point is hanging in the balance, right? We're all on pins and needles because there's going to be this runoff election for Senate involving 2 Senate seats in the state of Georgia. And the predictions are that the Republicans are going to win them. But the Republicans are internally divided over the crazy stuff that Donald Trump is spewing at that point about the outcome of 2020. So there is an organized effort to challenge 364,000 voters, 364,000 voters in advance of that runoff election. And we know that that was an organized effort. My law firm is in fact suing some of the people who helped organize that effort. So to answer your question, is this 6 random people, 2 years later? Come on. We know what this is, Brian. This is a nationwide effort to deny people the right to vote, and in Georgia, it is taking form in these vigilante voter purges.
Now, in practice here, how have these voter challenges actually harmed voters in Georgia? And in what nefarious ways could these right-wing activists exploit this process to intentionally harm voters in Georgia?
I think it's devastating. Just imagine you're the voter. You're working a full-time job, and you come home one day and there is a piece of mail from your local county saying that you may not be eligible to vote. How would you feel? How would you feel if you were told you may not be eligible to vote and that there'll be a hearing about whether or not you're going to be stripped of that eligibility? It is destructive to democracy for the people who are ultimately removed and not able to vote, but it is destructive to democracy. It is something out of an Orwellian novel that we are encouraging this third-party, vigilantism to try to intimidate people, to try to denigrate people, to try to question people, make people believe there's something wrong with what they have done simply by being registered to vote.
To that point, one of the provisions of SB 202 is that counties have to hear any voter challenges within 10 days of providing notice that their eligibility has been challenged. Counties are required to hold a hearing on every single challenge, regardless of how frivolous each challenge actually is. Why is the burden not on the challenger to prove their claim? Why does the person being challenged have to show up, to take a day off of work, to drive to wherever the courtroom is, to be inconvenienced, to lose money, to defend their innocence? Why is the burden not on the complainant to actually prove their claims? Why does the person being challenged have to show up and prove their innocence?
That is such an important point. I want everyone who's listening to listen to what Brian just said. And the answer to why that is because Georgia Republicans, after that challenge of 364,000 voters did not succeed, it did not block Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff from taking seats in the U.S. Senate. What happened in that case is that in those instances that most of the counties refused to go along with these challenges. So Republicans in the state of Georgia changed the law, as you say, in SB 202, to change the process, to put the burden on the voter, to make the counties adjudicate these challenges. That's why you have this. You have this because Brad Raffensperger, Brian Kemp, the Republican leadership of the state of Georgia, to their great and everlasting shame, they made it this way because that's how they wanted it to be.
Mark, what are the Democrats doing to fight back against this? Like, how can progressives respond at the same scale that these right-wing activists are working to basically challenge, tens of thousands of votes single-handedly in the same way that they are? Like, why would we allow Republicans to have a monopoly on abusing this system? Wouldn't we be able to kind of do harm to this system if we did the exact same thing to show Republicans that they're not the only ones who are able to leverage this abuse of the system in the way that they have?
Yeah, so look, the first thing I'm doing with my team is we're suing. Like we sued over those 364,000 challenges. We were able to beat back enough of them in court and through political power in the counties to allow that election to go forward. We are still suing on behalf of Fair Fight. We have an active case against True the Vote, which was the organization that was the ringleader in 2020. And we are looking at what happened in 2022. And my message to the ringleaders in 2022 is we are looking. Okay, well, if people transgress people's civil rights and voting rights, we will take action in court. Beyond that, the question is like, well, what do we do? What do we do as progressives? What do we do as Democrats? I don't want to collapse the system of voting in Georgia. I do not want a system in which every voter winds up being challenged by one side or the other. We need to stand up and tell these people who are doing these challenges, they are doing a civic harm to this country. We need to tell the counties that they need to follow the law, but by golly, they need to give every benefit to the voter and they need to dismiss these challenges. And we need to hold the Republicans who passed this law and enforce this law accountable. Where is Brad Raffensperger issuing guidance to the counties, telling them to give the benefit of the vote, the benefit of the doubt to voters? Why do we have the appalling silence of the Republican establishment in Georgia while these 6 people are doing this? Why are they not outcasts in the Republican movement? So I think you and I know the answer to that, but I don't want to collapse the voting system by saying everyone should do it. I want us to stand up to the bullies here and try to fight back.
Yeah. Activists have justified their efforts by claiming that people might exploit flaws in the voter rolls to commit fraud. But is there any proof that there is some issue of voters exploiting flaws in the voter rolls to commit any semblance of widespread fraud?
None. I mean, and by the way, the bitterest, if I sound bitter, I am. I'm bitter for the voters and I'm bitter for democracy. I'm bitter for everyone who's given a free pass and said, you know what, SB 202 wasn't that bad. I'm bitter for the people who have made a living getting paid to say SB 202 wasn't that bad. And I am bitter because the fact is there is no fraud being captured by this. You know what? You know how you'd capture the duplicate registrations that they say they're going after here? By being an Eric.
I was just going to say,
by being an
Eric. Yeah.
Yeah, right? By being an Eric. So isn't that the bitterness upon bitterness here? That after all of this strum and drum and this ridiculous law, it is Republicans who are taking themselves out of the intrastate compact that actually allows states to passively, without inconveniencing voters, keep their voter rolls clean.
Mark, are there any other states where we can expect some type of similar effort of disenfranchising Democratic voters under the pretense of cleaning up the rolls?
Look, I think that we should just assume bad ideas are going to spread like wildfire in Republican states, right? So like, a voter suppression idea doesn't stay contained in one state; it spreads from state to state. And I would draw a straight line, Brian, for you and for everyone, between what we saw in Georgia and what we saw with armed vigilantes at drop boxes in Arizona. In both cases, you have the Republican Party and the laws encouraging this kind of vigilantism. In Georgia, it's these mass challenges. In Arizona, it's people in body armor staking out drop boxes. And so, do I think we're going to see this spread? Sure, we're going to see this spread. We'll see this spread in other Republican-controlled states where they promote these kinds of vigilante tactics. In some places, it'll be challenges to voter registration. In other places, it'll be challenges at the polls. In other places, in North Carolina, there's a new bill pending that would let partisan poll watchers stand 5 feet away from voters while they vote. Right. So we're seeing it in different iterations, different places, but it is a scourge on the democracy. And we need to stand up and prevent this from spreading.
All right, and just one more question, and I apologize if you've answered this already, but is there any challenge being presented to this massive vigilantism, that allows these right-wing activists, just a handful of right-wing activists, to challenge so many thousands of Democratic voters' ability to vote?
So like I said, we're in court right now over the 2021 challenges that were coordinated by True the Vote. Okay. We are looking at the evidence that ProPublica provided. We are looking at, the underlying data. We are trying to figure out if there is a case to be brought. We will consider bringing litigation on behalf of aggrieved parties, on behalf of voters who are subject to this unwarranted, humiliating, anti-democratic behavior. I don't have anything to announce right now, but my track record speaks for itself. If people are going to transgress the voting rights of people, then we're gonna see whether there are court options to vindicate those rights.
Well, that seems like a good place to leave off. So for anybody watching, to support Marc and his team in the amazing work that they do, including in cases like this one, make sure to subscribe for Democracy Docket. It is a free news outlet focused on voting rights and elections. The link is right here on the screen. It's also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.